If you ever have trouble keeping your paper from sliding around inside your stamp positioner or on your work surface while you're stenciling or ink blending, this video is for you. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. Ever since I got a chance to try out the Waffle Flower grip mats, I knew I had to do a whole video focused on them. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the grip mats and how cool they are. I'll also share the different sizes that are available and how you might use those different sizes or choose between them. And I'll share a whole bunch of ways to use them. So let's take a close-up look at the grip mats and what makes them so unique. There are 6 different sizes of Waffle Flower grip mats. They start at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and they go all the way up to 8 1/2 by 8 1/2. I'll show you each of the sizes and ways to use them. They each come with a carrier sheet on the front and the back, as well as grid sheets. I decided to share a little bit about how different they are than gel plates because Waffle Flower got a lot of questions about that. The grip mats are a photopolymer. They are a heavy-duty photopolymer, the same that you get in your really good clear stamps that are made in the United States. And they are much thinner than the gel plates. Now, the gel plates are made to do certain techniques on top of them to create prints. The grip mats are much stickier than the gel plates. They're meant to keep things in place on them and to keep them in place on your work surface. Now, let's jump into a bunch of techniques using the grip mats. Let's start with 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. If you keep the carrier sheets on them, that size fits inside your mini MISTI. You can keep the back carrier sheet on if you want to take it in and out of your mini MISTI constantly, and then you'll have a sticky surface on the front. If you want to keep it from sliding around, just tape that back carrier sheet down to your mini MISTI, and now you have a sticky surface on the front with a stuck-on surface on the back that is easily removable. So place a piece of white cardstock right on the grip mat, place your grid right on top of that grip mat, and then you can line up your stamp right in the center or anywhere on the card and make sure it is nice and straight, which I absolutely love. Then just take off that grid mat and ink up your stamp, close the MISTI door, and you'll have a perfectly placed stamp. Now you can also use this on your work surface. This small size is a great size to try out if you're not sure if you're gonna like them or not. I promise you're gonna love them, but it's a great small size to give it a whirl. So I have mine placed on my glass mat, and then of course, I have my Distress Oxide ink. That's my favorite ink to work with, especially on different surfaces, because I know it's going to clean off really easily because it is water reactive. So I have the Waffle Flower blending brushes, and I'm able to really blend all around that stamp in the center to create a fun, different look. Also great for die cuts, holding them in place if you've already die cut them and you want to color them with ink. So again, I have my Waffle Flower blending brushes, I have my die cuts placed down onto the grip mat, which is on my glass work surface. And you can see it held it perfectly in place, so I'm able to get a perfect blend on those little die cut balloons. Then just spray it with a little bit of water and dab it off with a towel. This is the 4 3/4 by 6 inch grip mat. Now this mat will fit inside the mini MISTI on its own without the carrier sheets. So remove the foam at the bottom and place the grip mat, which is open from both carrier sheets, on it. You'll still be able to see your grid surface on the bottom of your MISTI, but you can of course still use the grids that come with the grip mat to line up your stamps the way I did before. Place it on the cardstock, place the stamp on top, close the door, open the door, and then remove that grid, and you have a perfectly placed stamp. Now you can see I can do lots of multiple stamps here because not only am I using the MISTI, but the cardstock cardstock is not moving around at all, not even that little bit that it moves with the magnets. And so I get a perfect ombre stamp. This is the 6x6 grip mat, and there are a number of different ways to use this as well. So I'm removing my foam pad from my original size Misty, and you can see that the 6x6 will place inside the original Misty with the carrier sheet on the bottom, which I taped down. So that again allows you to rotate it if you need to rotate it. This is also perfect for, say, those 5.5 stencils, and it will hold the stencil down on the sides and hold the paper down in the center. So there's no need for taping those stencils. So when you have multiple stencils like this layering stencil, you can easily peel off the stencil, reline the second and third stencil, and the cardstock and the grip mat stay in place. So this is a great way to get a perfectly stenciled background. The 6.5 by 8.5 grip mat fits perfectly inside the original Misty without the carrier sheets. So it sits on the glass base underneath. You press it into place, and then you have a very sticky surface that you don't need to use magnets at all. So no shifting inside your Misty. So I have that wishing you, and then the happy birthday stamp. You can use your grids as well. All of the mats come with grids so that you can line things up and get a perfect placement of your stamp on top of that stenciled background. So I think having one for each of my Misty sizes and then the 8.5 by 8.5 is the perfect combination, because this 8.5 by 8.5 will work with 6x6 stencils perfectly on your work surface. So I have it stuck down to my glass mat. Right in the center is the cross lines of my glass mat, which I can still see through the grip mat. And then I've die cut this balloon background that works with that layering stencil. You can see that the die cut stays stuck down to the grip mat, and then the stencil on top stays stuck down on top. So it is holding on to the edges where there's no die cut and in those little open spaces in between as well. So I really only keep my hand there because that's what I'm used to doing when I ink blend, but everything stays perfectly stuck down. If you ever find that it is not as sticky, just clean it off with a little bit of water. You probably just have some dust on there, and that's why it's not sticking. But this will always maintain stickiness because it's not adhesive. It's just the photopolymer that is making it stick. So here is the third layer of that stencil, and again, I'm able to get perfect placement and then keep it in place and then just peel it up. Now I know Waffle Flower is testing out a bunch of different mediums. Personally, I love to work with different mediums, but I also really love to work again with my Distress Oxide inks because they are so easy to clean. They also react to water, so you can spritz right on top of the grip mat there and it will spritz that really beautiful oxidized effect. Here I have a large balloon die cut and I'm just doing some open ink blending, not using a stencil, and ink blending a rainbow of colors on top of this balloon. So a little bit of ink will get onto the grip mat and I will just spritz it with water and clean it off. Again, it's not moving at all. Here I have a larger piece of paper. It is 8.5 by 5.5. So if I wanted to ink blend with a stencil on this that is only 5.5, you can see that the stencil has nowhere to stick to. So Waffle Flower has brilliantly created an extender. You just slip it inside the tabs, your stencil. First peel out this centerpiece, which gives you some masks and stencils to work with. Peel out that centerpiece and then you just stick it inside the tabs. Your stencil goes inside those tabs and has the opening of the stencil inside the opening of this extender. And what the extender does is turn your 5.5 width stencil into a 6 width stencil. So you can see if you tape that down on the back of that extender, the stencil and the extender will stay connected, and then the extender will hold everything in place on the grip mat over the paper because now it is wider than that 5.5 paper. I just think that's brilliant. And it also helps you to keep things from getting onto the grip mat, because you can see you have a little bit more work surface on the sides, and so you won't get ink on there or any of your pastes or anything, and you can just clean that adapter off just like you would a stencil. So here's the third stencil in that layering stencil set. I have it taped behind the adapter. Then I just peel both of those off, and check this out, another perfectly stenciled background. I mentioned that they give you some masks and things inside, so I thought I would use the circular stencil, you also get the mask, to create a spotlight on this stenciled background. I am again using the adapter to hold it in place, and then I just placed that rectangle with the open circle inside and taped that to the adapter, and there you go, you get a nice spotlight on that die cut and stenciled background. Now I'll place that whole thing inside the original size Misty with the 6.5 by 8.5 grip mat in it, and I'll be able to stamp a sentiment right on top. So ink blending, stamping, how about circular stamping? So for this, I'm going to use the 6x6 Grip Mat Guides Trio. Comes with 3 different guides that perfectly fit on the 6x6 mat. Obviously, you can use them on the 8.5 by 8.5. You can use them on the original size Misty mat that I usually keep inside. But this time, I just wanted to show you on the 6x6 mat. So what I have done is grabbed a small stamp set from the We Heard stamp set. It's got a couple little balloons, and I'm lining up the cardstock inside the A2 guide vertically on 2 sides and then horizontally on 2 sides. And then I'll take those balloons and place it at that diagonal in between the top and left. And I just keep rotating the paper using the guide because it has an A2 vertical guide and an A2 horizontal guide. What you could do is not stick down the 6.5 by 6.5 and just tape it down. This way you can take it out and rotate the entire mat. That would be a lot easier, but I wasn't thinking when I did it. So this is the 5.5 by 8.5 grip mat. This is the one mat we haven't worked with yet. I'm peeling off both carrier sheets, and you can see that I've placed a grid line on the front or the back, depending on which you want to do, but I have it placed on the back because what I'm going to do with this is place it inside my large stenciling mat from Waffle Flower. So if you have any of the stenciling mats or the Waffle Flower water media mat, they have corners that you can place things into so that it doesn't slide around. So I've placed it into the corner. That gives me a grid line on my Waffle Flower stencil mat because the grid is in the background. So I can line up my card and I can line up my stencils right on top, and they stay stuck down onto the grip mat, and then the grip mat stays tucked into the 2 corners of my Waffle Flower stencil mat. So just another way that you can use these if you already have that. Now let's use all this to make some cards. I have the Waffle Flower birthday balloons die, which has this happy birthday die cut. I decided to cut it out of the coral pink and yellow balloons and back it with some darker pink cardstock. But I did want to pop the little BRDA pieces into place. So I put a little glue where they should be and then used the entire positive and placed it into that open area, press down on the piece that I want to stay and then peel out the piece that I want to go. So I'm using a Simon Says Stamp Place It tool and the Spellbinders tool-in-one to do all of that. So now the front of that card is done, but Waffle Flower has a bunch of inside sentiments. So I'm peeling off that top carrier sheet of the grip mat that I have inside my mini Misty. And then I place the bottom of my card base inside the mini Misty with the top hanging out, use the grid mat to line up that stamp and then stamp it exactly where I want it in the center of the base. Then all that's left to do is put some tape runner on the front of your card and place that panel right on top so that you have the outside and the inside of the card with your birthday message. For the next card, I'm using the rainbow balloon die cut. I'm going to pop that up on the outside of my card base with some foam tape. For the inside, I have the sentiment Subsentiment that I stamped in the center. I ink blended around the outside, and I have those two balloons. I'm going to adhere them around that subsentiment. On the front, I'll use one of the Waffle Flower Subsentiment birthday die cuts, and then it's just adhering the front down to the outside of the card base and the inside to the inside of the card base. Yes, those two extra pieces make it a tiny bit thicker, but I love how easy that is to put it all together if you don't have to do all the pieces on the card base itself. For the next card, I decided to stamp the Subsentiment on the inside of the actual card base, so I used that grid to line it up, and then I stamped it this time with some Distress Oxide ink. I'll place a little bit of tape runner on the outside, and then we have again that perfectly stenciled and stamped birthday card. I love using these grip mats for everything on these cards. I have the multicolor balloon die cut, and I pop it up on some foam tape on some silver mirror cardstock, add one of the Subsentiments from Waffle Flower, and again stamp an inside sentiment with their inside sentiment stamp set. Again, everything here was done with the grip mats. It holds it in place for your stenciling, your stamping, your ink blending. Here's another of those balloon die cuts. This is the one with the Distress Oxide ink splattered with water. I'll pop that up on the outside of the card base. I have another one of those Waffle Flower Subsentiment die cut birthday sentiments on the outside, and then one of their Subsentiments for the inside of the card on the inside. Again, holding everything in place with my grip mat. Even for adhering down, I could use the grip mat to hold it in place right on my work surface so it didn't slide around. So as you use these grip mats, you're going to find innumerable ways to use them. You're going to think of lots of different things that you need to hold in place while you're working. Again, for this card, I could have used the grip mat to hold that blue piece of cardstock in place while I adhered the panel on top, but I did use it to stamp the inside sentiment. So again, these are perfect for holding things in place while you ink blend, stamp, stencil, and much more. I don't know about you, but I am blown away by this new tool from Waffle Flower, how innovative it is, how helpful it is, and how affordable it is. Let me know in the comments below if you've already snagged a grip mat, or if this video helped you to decide which one is best for you. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon.